Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Here with the awesome and amazing Randy Penton. You're going to want to look this guy up right here, right now. It's penningtongroup.com. And Randy, tell us a little bit about the empire. What's the business as it is today? Tell us how it works, what you sell, who you sell it to, and then a little bit of the backstory of what brought you to the work that you're doing today.
Great question. And first off, thanks for having me, David. I appreciate it. I always love listening to you and what you do. And let me just go ahead and put a plug in for everyone who is watching this or listening to this first time. David is one of the most disciplined, thoughtful people I've seen in years. And by the way, if you're watching this, you see a lot of gray hair. It's all real. It's not painted in for effect to make me look older. He's one of the most thoughtful, disciplined, systematic, all the things that you really need to be a great sales professional today. And so I want to encourage you to continue to build that resource. You didn't ask me for that commercial, but I thought that I would give it to you anyway.
Thank you. I appreciate that hugely.
Yeah. So let me kind of tell you my business. I help leaders figure out and to deliver positive results in a world of uncertainty and change. It's what I do. It's what I've done for, in essence, almost 30 years. I mean, the way the work has been done has changed, but the work really hasn't changed that much at all. So if you ask me what space do I work in strategy, I work in corporate culture, I do organizational change and transformation. And along the way, I do some leadership development and some executive coaching, but it's all around those things of how do you deliver positive results in a world of uncertainty and change. I see myself as a resource. I don't call myself a speaker or a coach or a consultant. I do all those things. It really is focused on how do I help people solve problems. And how I came to this is, years and years and years ago in a previous life, I was a hospital administrator. I did a startup of a facility in Waco, Texas, where I was one of 3 senior leaders that opened a facility from the ground up. I ran 8 departments. We were state supported. I was the strategy liaison to the legislative budget board and liaison to the legislature and all those things. Got recruited away by a consulting firm. We were in the corporate culture change performance management space. I was a partner in that firm, became CFO of that firm. Went out on my own 30 plus years ago, and decided early on that I was much more content helping people solve problems than managing a group of consultants helping people solve problems. So that's why I ended up where I am. And, I do all the things that people in our space do, David. I write books, I blog, I speak, I coach. Probably the only smart thing that I've said about the industry that you and I share is that thinking of yourself and calling yourself a speaker or coach or whatever is like calling yourself a Coke machine. It's a distribution system. And would you rather be the Coke machine or would you rather be the Coke? And so I think about that every day as I think about solutions for my clients.
I love that metaphor so much because, of course, Coke comes in a 12-ounce can. It comes in a 2-liter bottle. It comes in a 55-gallon drum of syrup. You can get Coke retail. You can get Coke wholesale. You can get Coke at McDonald's. It's not about the container or the distribution method. It's about the source. And that can be used in all different ways, small, medium, large, and super size.
Right. And by the way, I find with my clients, and right now I'm working with 4 or 5 clients really hands-on, and then the assorted one-off things that I do. But they all think, if I can get them to think of their business that way too, they think I only produce this. Well, wait a minute. For example, I did a strategy session with a company that manages homeowner associations. If you ever think you have a thankless job, be a company that manages HOAs. And one of the things that they found is they're really good, but they can only serve HOAs at a certain size because of the level of service that they look to provide. It's their signature level of service. We used that same metaphor of Coke machine and Coke and said, what is the service we can provide to small, medium, even larger than what you work in today, but mostly smaller and medium sized, so that that Coke can be delivered in a different way. And I think it's a great way, especially if you're in a service business, it's a great way of thinking about how you deliver your product.
Yes, for sure. Well, let's actually talk about this, because my next question for you is, can you please break down for us the different revenue streams, the different things that you sell? I know going to your website, and we just talked about this high level, but there's consulting, there's executive coaching, there's strategic planning, there's facilitation, there's a series of assessments that you do for your clients. First of all, break down kind of what those are, and then how do you think about those when you're in a sales conversation or when you're looking at your set of investable opportunities and which one might fit a client best?
That's another great question. First off, the revenue streams that I have we break them down into three broad categories. One is what we call the sage on the stage category. And that's anything around me live in a kind of one-off, small, limited engagement speech, executive retreat, leadership program, that type of program. That's part of the sage on the stage revenue. And some of that is, in fact, facilitation. Facilitation is more of a skill that I incorporate into almost everything that I do. Although there are times people hire me for one-off, come facilitate a meeting for us because we need an outside perspective. I actually don't prefer to do facilitation that's outside of my core competencies in business. So you need to facilitate a strategy session? Yes. How do we change our business? Yes. I got a call yesterday from a group that wants to do some organizational redesign and help me facilitate. Okay, that's within my core competency. I will do pure facilitation, but I don't like to. So do that. Coaching. I don't sell coaching. I offer coaching as a service to my clients that I work with. Consulting pretty much goes in on a project basis. The consulting and the coaching are more the long-term strategy type things. Long-term engagement. My longest single client is 17 years.
Nice.
So I tend to go in, and once I am there, I figure out ways to sell them other things. And then the third revenue is sort of the products, the assessments. I have books. I do 360. I do behavior styles. I do all the kinds of assessments that are used. And that's become an interesting part of our business. In the last year, I've found myself helping companies do selection of high-level employees. COO, CFO, Chief Marketing Officer. I'm doing one right now, VP of Sales for a $300 million company. And we do an assessment and me talking to them, because I can do it all virtually, and helping them with selection of senior level people. And that's been an interesting thing that's come up just in the last year that I've been getting calls to, can you help me? So that's kind of how my business breaks down.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I specifically love the distinction between here's what I specifically market and sell and promote. And these other things, I do them, but I only do them when clients ask. So it's kind of like the secret Starbucks menu. It's not on the big public menu, but if you know what you're doing, you can ask for it.
Yeah, and that's part of the clarity around what people buy. My favorite car dealers, the one I've been with, if you hear me around anytime, you'll hear me talk about Sewell Automotive and Sewell Lexus.
Legendary.
Carl Sewell has been very, very nice to me over the years and literally opened the back doors of his business to let me in and see how they operate. So Carl If you go to his Lexus dealership, it has Lexus on the sign. But if you go to the car lot, you'll see a lot of other things. But you don't come there buying, you come there because it's a Lexus dealership. You know what you're getting. And I think, again, if you're in a service business, there's an easier way to do that. If you say, I sell every kind of car imaginable, well, wait a minute, that's a used car lot. I don't want to go there. But if you say, I sell a Lexus, and if you come looking, we have some other things too, that seems to work better.
Wow, what a great insight. Totally agree. I love that. Hey, if you're loving this episode as much as I am, pop over to doitmarketing.com/manifesto and get your free 37-page download guide to how to sell smarter, sell more easily, sell more often. That's what we're here to help you with at The Selling Show. Off you go. One of my favorite segments of this show is when we kind of talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of sales and selling. And I want to ask you the next question, which is there a sale that you can remember that you just thought you totally blew it? You just thought, well, this isn't going to happen, or there was some gaffe, or there was some misunderstanding, or something took a dramatic left turn, but it turns out the prospect didn't see it as a problem, or you were able to recover the sale, or it was just a sale that surprised the heck out of you. Is there a story you can share in that vein?
There is one. I received a call from, I'm not going to tell you the name. There's actually two. One I lost, one I got. The one I got was a client called. They'd asked for a scope of work, proposal of work. We had everything agreed on. And I knew they had a deadline for when they needed this accomplished. And they just kept dragging their feet and dragging their feet and dragging their feet and dragging their feet. I mean, we've all had those, right? They just like, come on. You're saying all the right words. Every time you go, are you ready yet? They go, oh, we got to do just a little more. Another 12 people have to look at it and what. So finally, and I'll credit my wife, Mary, with this. She said, call them and tell them you're done. And I said, well, I'm not sure. She goes, okay, this was on a Thursday. She said, call them and tell them that they have until end of business day, our time on Friday, or you're done. And I go, okay, well, that I can do. And I called them and I just said, all right, here's where we are. You said you need it by this date. You found me because of a referral from another client of mine who was very happy. I make my living off of referral and repeat business. And I am no longer comfortable that if we go beyond tomorrow afternoon, that I can deliver the quality of product and service that you expect and that my reputation has led you to me from. So I'm just letting you know, there's no pressure. But if you want me, tomorrow, 5 p.m. Central, the deal is off the table. Man, that's hard to do for a salesperson, isn't it?
The ultimatum.
And sure enough, they called about 3 p.m. They said, we're sending you over the faxing or emailing or whatever. We're sending you over the signed agreement. We're ready to get started. I thought that I had made a gaffe.
Turns out standing your ground, not a bad strategy.
Saying no is a great strategy.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the other side, Randy. And I know that this happens and it frustrates the living daylights out of me. It frustrates the living daylights out of many of our listeners. Can you think of a sale that was totally textbook? You did absolutely everything right. They're interested. They're moving forward. It is going great guns. And then for some reason, it turns into a no. You felt great all along the way. You were counting the money. You were already buying the boat. You were already spending the money. This was such, in the bag, ready to go. The operation was a huge success, but the patient died. Is there a story that you have? And then is there advice from that story that you learned?
There is one that comes to mind. It wasn't quite buying the boat, but it was adding 7 figures to my retirement size. And I got a call from a group, and again, they found me off a referral. And I started off with I'll spend 30, 45 minutes with you, which I always tend to do. I'll spend 30 to 45 minutes just to see if it's interesting and see if there's a fit. And it did. And they said, okay, this is a proposal. They were taking 3 divisions of a national company and moving them into one. And I said, look, here's what we're going to do. And I even went out and put a team together and found people that, found my resources and had the team together, put them the proposal in. And we did everything right, David. We did everything right. I knew who our competitors were. And my competitors on this were 2 of the big 4 consulting companies and me. But man, we just hit it. Everything was right. They were saying all the right words and everything came along. And on Friday, July the 3rd, I remember the day, Friday, because it was right before the 4th of July, they said, we need you and your team in our office on Monday morning for the meeting. And I'm like, really? Friday, July the 3rd? And you're calling me and wanting all my team? So well, first off, let me get back to you. One of them was flying on an airplane that morning. Another one was here. Another one was here. And I said, look, here's what we can do. We can't be at the site. But if you and your team, this is pre-COVID, obviously, if you and your team will go to this location, we have a video link set, and all of us will be there via video. I have coffee and Danish and rolls and everything there. If you'll go there, we'll be there. And they said, let me get back to you. They called back and said, okay, you're off the list. You're done. And what I learned from that is you've got to figure out, there's 2 lessons. One is know who your competitors are and know what they can do that you can't do. Because these guys were just going to go into whoever's in the office that day, come go with us, sit in a meeting. They had seat fillers there. I had already given the people a name. The second thing is know what your buyer motivation is. And that's where I really messed up. It turns out that at the end of the day, the client was motivated more by what won't get me fired than what will help our business. I just missed that piece that I didn't think through the buyer motivation.
Yeah. Wow. Well, jumping off that for a quick moment, I know that you are masterful at uncovering, perhaps except in this one story, uncovering what a client really wants, what a client really needs, what a client will really help them move the needle on their results. Are there a couple of favorite sales questions that you have developed out of a sense of bravery or a sense of, well, most consultants don't ask this kind of question, but I do because I need to hear the real, honest, deep answer? A couple of sales questions that are your go-to favorites that most people might not be asking or might not be asking often enough.
One of the questions is, what would you need to know? What would you need to feel? What would it need to look like for this problem to be solved? Tell me how you'll know this problem is solved. Tell me what it will feel like when this problem is solved. Tell me what people will be doing more tomorrow than they're doing today when this problem is solved. Because that tells me sort of where they need to go activity-wise to be able to do that. The second thing that I always ask is, how do you know? So when they say our problem is, a recent one I just had, our problem is people are leaving our company in the Great Resignation because we're not paying enough. How do you know? They're like, what do you mean? Well, how do you know? Are you talking to them? Have you done the analysis? Have you done the work? Or they're saying it's because our supervisors are not good with people. How do you know? What I want them to do in that is to understand not what they think their problem is, but I want to try to get to what have they actually done? What have they done to truly analyze what their pain is? Because sometimes I find myself selling the analysis before I sell the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm hearing you say, Randy, is that one of your strategies that has served you really well is you stay in the conversation longer. You ask more questions, you ask better questions, you ask deeper questions, and you're not willing to move on until you get the real underlying answers.
And I like to think that I do that. And that one that I messed up on, everyone's a learning one. I mean, somebody told me once, this is obviously not your first rodeo. And I said, you're exactly right. But if you've been in the rodeo business for a long time, you know that every bull is different.
Yes.
And so you just have to always learn from that.
Absolutely agree. Let's go tactical for a couple of minutes. I know that you talk to a lot of people, and we mentioned, I think before we turned the microphones on, you and I were talking about you're much more concerned about being a resource to your prospects and your clients than really doing a hard sale or breaking down doors or pushing, but being more of a resource and then letting the right people step forward. What is your keep in touch strategy with prospects and clients and past clients that keeps you in front of them, but without being a pastor, without seeming like pushy or weird?
Great question. The biggest thing that I do, and this kind of goes back to who my clients are, and that's one of the things that I learned over the last 5 or 6 years, is the strategy for keeping in touch with your clients may not be the same strategy that you need to keep in touch with my clients. My clients don't do social media. But they read an email once a month that's got valuable content. So my go-to strategy is, and with my prospects too, I don't bug you. I don't send out repeated emails. I know you send out way more emails than I do, and that works for your clients.
That's right.
For my clients, it works for once a month. I get something. It's 500 to 700 words. It solves something that's going on today. There's like a little blurb on this that's like this big on the side that says, oh, by the way, are you thinking about this? Call Randy. But that's it. I mean, that's my strategy. And then I write a lot. I, do a lot of other things. But again, that's who my clients do. And I can always tell, David, when I've hit on something. I mean, your email does this too. Do you ever track how many opens do you get per person?
Tell me what you mean by per person.
So if I send an email out to you, and you open it one time, it shows up on my counter as one time.
Right.
You ever look at see how many times David opened that email?
No.
Because I track that a lot. I'll send to businesses, I'll send to the CEO. My list is relatively small, but I'll see that 2 months ago, 81 people opened that one person's email.
So they're passing it around, they're sharing it, they're saying, hey, have a look at what just came in.
And so if it's the CEO and I know who it is, I know that every manager in that company got that email that said, read this.
Wow, that is powerful. I love that.
And now I can go back and say, hey, Ms. CEO, first off, I appreciate you sending that email around. It obviously resonating with you and your team. Let's talk about what do you need? Why did you do that? Tell me more.
Yeah.
But see, for me, that is often a better indicator of what's going on inside that business. If the CEO said, I'm sending this to every manager, it's like, wait a minute, that's a buying clue, I think is what you would call that.
Yes. I love that. Well, this brings me to, let's say they're not on your list yet, but you would love to have a certain client or a certain CEO on your client list. You'd love to serve them and help them. Are there some door opening strategies over the years that you have found particularly effective? And what do you typically do to get on a prospect's radar if they're on the Randy list that I would love to do business with this company or with this CEO?
First off, I'll tell you, of all the things that I do, this is one of the things that I'm worst at, compared to everything else.
Fair enough.
But I'll tell you what I do. So for example, I wrote a book that you've referenced several times, Results Rule.
Yeah.
Also wrote a really great one called Make Change Work, and every business going through change. I will send a book. I'll read something in a newspaper. I'll read something in a magazine and say, I saw that you were doing this. Here's an idea, and just send it to them. Or I will send them a link to one of my posts. I was a contributor for the Huffington Post for about 3.5 years or so, back when you had to actually do something to be a contributor for the Huffington Post. And I will send them a link. I'll send something that way. I always try to lead with value. And that's the thing. I always try to lead with value. And I saw you do something last month that I think is a great model for thinking about this, is when you talked about, if this kind of client, this is the problem they're facing, your matrix, if you will. By the way, if you're watching this and you haven't seen David's Matrix, go get David's Matrix. It's a great way of thinking about this. Yeah. And I actually helped a sales team. Interestingly, we were talking about their sales process. And what I had been talking with them about and have continued to work with them on is understanding your customers' needs. And then going back and tailoring your sales process to reinforce that. So here would be a tactical question. I mean, let's assume we all know everything about our business. It's our business. We should. Do we know everything about our customers or our prospects' business? And realize the more I know about your business, the easier it is for me to sell to you. But more important, what do you know about, especially if you're selling B2B, but it works B2C as well. What do you know about your customers' business? Because if I can help you solve your customer's biggest problem, I have added more value. And I've added a unique value that probably very few other people are talking about.
And you've also demonstrated a deeper understanding of that prospect's business because you know about your customer's customer, your prospect's customer. Totally agree. So both of those things I think are critical. And you're going to need to re-listen, put those earbuds back in, rewind to all these gems that Randy is dropping. Wait. We're not just going to listen to this episode. There are downloads, there are resources, there are links, there are bonuses waiting for you on this episode's page when you go over to doitmarketing.com/podcast. That's right, doitmarketing.com/podcast. Grab the notes right under this episode. See you over there. The trigger event. Seeing something in the news, seeing something in the media, paying attention to maybe it's national news, maybe it's in your metropolitan newspaper, maybe it's in your local business journal, seeing something and then sending that executive or sending that sales leader or sending that CEO a link to an article or a copy of your book in the mail because of what you saw. This is something that I teach our clients all the time, and sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't. Every prospect, Randy, is asking 3 questions when they get any sort of outreach from people like you, people like me. Number 1, why me? Number 2, why this? Number 3, why now? What you're describing answers those 3 questions perfectly. Why me? Why this? Why now? Well, because we're going through this craziness in our company and it ended up in the business journal. That's why me, why this, and why now. I love that.
Yeah. And years ago, I was able to strike up a relationship with Mary Kay Ash of Mary Kay Cosmetics. And I'd asked Mary Kay to help me with one of my books. And here's the other thing that I found. If you ask the right way with a level of authenticity and humbleness, most people will at least listen to. I had a book years ago that the cover endorsement was President Gerald Ford. And people always ask me, how did I get that cover endorsement? How did I sell Gerald Ford on me, Randy Penton, a guy I know? And I said, truthfully, I called. I called his office. There was a lady in his office whose name was Judy Risk, R-I-S-K. Well, I remember the old Saturday Night Live, Chevy Chase, Gerald Ford always falling down stuff. And she said, hi, this is Judy Risk. And I just paused for a second and said, man, I bet nobody's ever given you grief about that name with working for Gerald Ford, have they? And she laughed. Could have gone either way, right? And that allowed us to strike up the conversation. And I think that's a lot of what salespeople miss, is that opportunity to go, let me connect with you on a different level. Yeah, I'm going to ask for something, but let me connect with you on a different level.
Yeah, human to human, right? It's not B2B, it's not B2C, it's H to H.
Absolutely.
I love that. Well, I know that in preparation for our time, you specifically asked me, you said, David, make sure to ask me about all the crazy mistakes that I have made in the sales arena, because I've made plenty of them. What are 2 or 3 of your favorites?
First off, one of them is not understanding what I do clearly enough. I actually had this feedback from someone who said, Randy, the marketplace can't find you because you're always moving. And I was always moving. This was fairly early in my career. And I was moving because I didn't truly have clarity on what I was doing. So there's internal work that I should have done earlier. And if I'd done that, it would have made the selling process easier. And I'll go back and even rephrase that. It would have made it easier for people to know why they should talk to me about buying. And I think that really is what we're hoping for. So that's the big mistake. The second thing is I wish I had understood and started tracking early enough where my business came from and putting some deeper analytics around where are the real revenue drivers in my business and where do they come from.
What's an example? If someone's listening right now and they go, oh, I've totally missed the boat, just like Randy did. What would be a quick analysis of those revenue drivers? What kind of metrics do you look at today that you were not looking at early on?
First off, I look much more today at margin than I did earlier on. I sort of learned from a business perspective, you can't make up unprofitable business on volume.
Amen.
So I look at margin a lot more today. The second thing I look at is, am I talking to people that own the checkbook, influence the checkbook, or have no clue where the checkbook even resides? That's from a qualitative standpoint in my business, but I know if a CEO calls me, that person has a checkbook. I know if a president of a division calls me, that person probably has a checkbook. Not as big as the CEO's, but it's something there. So I look at that metric. I also look at close rates. I know that in our business that if I end up talking to somebody on the phone or visiting them, there's probably a 70% plus chance of me doing business with them. And so I start to look at, first off, are those numbers still active? And then the second thing is I start to look at when they're not active, what does that mean about who I'm speaking with? Because usually it tracks to, if my conversion rate goes down, that tells me that I'm not speaking to the right people. So, those are 3 really quick ones that I use. And after this many years, I sort of think that way. I can do it almost on the fly. Earlier on, I had dashboards and spreadsheets and everything else, but you got to build that habit. And once you build a habit, it happens.
Yes, I love that. Well, as we're in the home stretch, I've got 3 final questions for you. One is going to be about your sales superpower, and you've already mentioned several. I'm going to ask you to pick one of your favorites. Your sales kryptonite, and then how people can get in touch and stay in touch with the rest of your brilliance. So, sales superpower is simply, is there a skill or an area that you have cultivated, you have focused on, you have developed, and now it is the magic? If Randy Penton were to go into the Superman phone booth and come out wearing the tights, wearing the leotard with the big capital S on your chest, what would that superpower be? What do you think is your best sales skill or sales intuition?
It's connecting with people to understand at a very deep level what the problem they're trying to solve or the opportunity they're trying to capture.
Huge.
The ultimate for me, I had a client introduce me to a group and said, I'd never heard of this guy. And then someone suggested that I talk to him. And I spent 20 minutes and thought to myself, this guy gets us. That's the practical example of being able to connect at that level.
Yeah. One thing, I'll throw another superpower at your feet, if that's okay, because in preparation for our interview, you also said that you don't try for a small sale first, right? There's no reason doing a transactional sale when you know that you can be of such a greater level of service to a company. You will talk about the big deal first and then see if you can help them on a transformational level before you even offer anything transactional like a one-time keynote or a one-time training day.
And that's because I usually tell people, I'm really good at what I do. You put me on the platform, I'm good at what I do. I'm not going to change your company or solve your problem in a 1-hour keynote. And anybody who tells you they are, I think that's professional malpractice on our part, because change doesn't happen that way. And so let's talk about, we may end up doing this, but let's talk about what are you going to do to actually solve your problem. Even if they call me with an event, I'll talk to them about a solution. I try not to sell activities. I try to sell solutions.
Yeah, really, really huge. Now, we mentioned one piece of sales kryptonite, and maybe that's the only piece of sales kryptonite, is you said that you're not that great at the new outreach, the initial door opening, because so much of your business obviously is repeat and referral. Maybe that outreach muscle has atrophied a little bit. Is that the main kryptonite, or is there another thing that you're working on improving?
That's one of them, absolutely. And I think the other main kryptonite kind of goes back to the strength. When I find myself selling activities rather than solutions, I don't do as well. Maybe it's because I feel inauthentic about it or whatever. But, for me to call up somebody and say, hey, I want to talk to you about your keynote slot next year, that doesn't feel right. And so, because I'm not talking to somebody who can solve a problem, they're filling a slot. And now I'm competing against everybody who is filling a slot. But when I can sell a solution, and as an example, how many people in our world, as a result of the last 2 years, now have something on change? And the answer is all of them.
All of them.
Yeah. And so when I'm selling in that world, I can say, we're looking at these 5 people on change. And the question I go back to, have they always been there? You can have somebody that sells, and I get to this with keynotes on culture. Somebody says, well, I'm looking at somebody from XYZ company on a culture speech. That's great. They know one way to do it. And if you want that way, you should absolutely hire them. I know about 100 ways to do it. So if you want their culture, hire them. If you want your culture, maybe we should have a different conversation.
Oh, so good. So good. I love that. Well, Randy, it's been such a pleasure. You've dropped so much gold here. How can our listeners get connected and stay connected to more Randy Penton brilliance? Can we send them somewhere? Should they sign up for something? And we'll also put this in the show notes, of course.
Yeah, perfect. Well, obviously the best place, if you want to catch me on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, all those kind of things, I'm active there. My website is Pennington Group, all one word, penningtongroup.com. You can sign up for a newsletter there. You'll get the once a month. That's all you're going to get. So don't, but we'll try to add value there. Those are probably the best ways. If you want to have a conversation with me about your business, which is sort of what I prefer, just drop me an email, randy@penningtongroup.com. We'll set up a time to chat.
Randy Penton, you are a master. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being on with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks, David. Oh, everybody, listen to David.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.